We have with us this afternoon Swapnish Maru, Deputy Managing Director, Toyota; Vishakha Bhagat, Lead Campex Hub India, Volvo; and Aman Jain, Director Public Policy, Amazon. And moderating this session is Smita Patil, Managing Director, Startup Gino. Please give them all a big round of applause. I'd like to invite them onto the stage. As I just mentioned, moderating the session is Smita Patil, Managing Director, Startup Genome. And on that note, over to you, Smita.
I think it should work now. Yes, it does. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm assuming you all have had a good lunch and are experiencing a very non-tech phenomena known as food coma. If you are, there's coffee outside, water outside. You're welcome to walk around. If you don't want to get yourself coffee, don't worry, we've got a plan. We've got a very energizing and refreshing conversation today. Hoping to find some new pointers on corporate innovation. We all know that, corporates that we have on stage today are Amazon, Volvo, and Toyota Kirloskar. Very well known, long-standing organizations, stable, large enterprises. Been around from 1927 for Volvo, 37 for Toyota, and the new kid on the block is Amazon, 94. So yes, very well established brands, and then we're talking about, of course today everyone's talking about innovation, AI, this buzzword, that buzzword. How do these two meet? How can we get corporate innovation and startups in the same organization working together? I mean, does that even work? We don't know. So that's the conversation we're going to have today. We have three stalwarts of the industry with us on stage. I'm going to introduce them to you, and we'll look forward to their fantastic insights on how it works in large enterprises and innovation. Starting off with Mr. Maru. Mr. Maru is the Deputy Managing Director for Toyota Kirloskar Motors. He started off in the finance space, CFA, moved to automobile, and since then has been there. So 25 odd years. Almost 28 years, I think, if you count the first 3 years as well. Worked with Toyota in Bangkok, moved to India, and has done many things. Runs the plant and now Deputy MD as mentioned. He's focusing on innovation, reduction of fossil fuel for Toyota, and how to be more sustainable in the Indian automobile mobility space. Next, we've got Vishakha. Thank you for joining us. Vishakha leads Campex from Volvo. She's been running the innovation program. She is a symbiosis graduate, starting off being an engineer in a different field, but moved into innovation. Continues to keep herself abreast. She's done a couple of certifications from Stanford University as well. She's been working in the innovation space for 17 years now, Vishakha. But always been in the automobile and mobility sector, working alongside the regulatory bodies, working alongside OEMs and partners. So she's got the real 360 degree of the mobility ecosystem and innovation. So look forward to your insights. And then we've got Aman Jain, who leads public policy for Amazon and also the marketplace, I think. Aman's been in public policy. He's got 2 degrees in public policy from University in New York. Then he's worked with various roles. I think Isaac is where you started as a volunteer, ended up as the CEO, then decided, oh, this is not enough for me, let me go work in the US. Did a couple of public policy roles there, including the last one with the Department of Justice, and gave it all up to come to Bharat Mata and serve in a very Indian company called Google first, and then moved into public policy for Amazon. I hope I've got your career journey, but you get the point. They're very, very experienced individuals, have been involved in the corporate innovation space, and are going to be talking today and sharing their insights on how corporate innovation and startups can work together for the benefit of the ecosystem. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you all for staying awake for the rest of the session. The format is very simple. We'll ask a couple of questions and then open it out to the audience. First question, Mr. Maru. With Toyota Kirloskar, right? It is, especially the one in Bangalore, the Birdi office and the manufacturing setup is largely manufacturing, right? Process-oriented, process-driven, and very almost regimented, I would assume. Otherwise, you're not going to get Six Sigma quality out of it. How does innovation fit into this? How do you go from being this well-oiled machine to having some agile cogs that don't really fit?
Good afternoon, Smita. On a lighter note, before we actually begin, any post-lunch session might need a slightly stronger dose than a coffee. And to all those startups who are out there, probably this is one area where you can tackle. I'm sure you'll find a global market. Coming to the question of innovation, and you were kind of specific about Toyota, but I think that's pretty large with any global multinational organization which is steeped in legacy. I would want to answer this in two parts. Firstly, innovation in general, and then probably giving the disruptive edge to innovation, which I believe would be on a different scale. So first, to begin with innovation itself and specific about Toyota, and it does not matter which part of the world you are in, because a Toyota factory, wherever you go in the world, will have a very similar DNA and ethos. But at the core of our operations is the concept of Kaizen, or that continuous, relentless pursuit of what is the next level of improvement. And it might sound very generic and to some extent even exotic, but you need to see the shop floor to believe this concept. So you have day-to-day workers who are doing their job to a point of regimental, like you said, SOP. But one of their key insight that they need to deliver day in, day out is, even within that SOP-driven job, what is the Kaizen that I can do? What is a change in quality, change in cost, change in productivity? And this happens by every single worker almost on a day-to-day basis. So that's innovation at one level. Probably the innovation that you are referring to is a disruptive one, where how do you then scale this up to the next level? And there I think the board plays a very important role. Again, giving the context of Toyota globally, we've got this pet project, which was a vision of the founder, not the founder, but the person at the helm, Mr. Akio Toyoda. It's called the Woven City, right? Once upon a time, Toyota started out as a loom maker, right? We were not into cars. And which is why the concept of weaving together, putting very different thoughts, bringing them together, continues to be our core DNA. And at the heart of this project is a statement which I would like to share with all of you. When we talk about inviting people to understand Woven City, we describe ourselves as we are explorers looking for innovators and disruptors. And at the concept of this Woven City is this theme about the mobility. Automobile is all about mobility as we go forward. And at the foothills of Mount Fuji, over 175 acres, we have set up what can be one of the biggest test labs in a real world, where we try to create a mobility-driven smart city of the future, where of course we participate. There are many like-minded companies which come, but it is thrown open to many startups who can come in and contribute to areas like automation, AI, fuel system, safety, housing, you name it. So I think until and unless you don't have vision at that scale, board mandates at that scale, and the commitment back to my money and the need to handhold, I think it would be difficult for big companies to innovate. Another example on very similar line, and I'm not sure how much time I have, is the concept of Toyota Mobility Foundation. Again, this cuts across regions, nothing to do with business. We work with cities. Varanasi is an example in India, where we try to understand the DNA of that city in terms of traffic, crowd flow, the need for mobility, and then try to offer meaningful solutions. And when you see the top doing this kind of activity, then from the bottom in a company where innovation is a culture, people tend to pick up that cues, tend to be agile, and more importantly, open to disruptions. I hope that partly answers your question.
I think that definitely answers my question and more, and lots of insights that actually came out from that, including the fact that you can have globalization and localization, with your Varanasi example, for example, and the fact that you said shop floors in Toyota look the same worldwide, right? One doesn't have to be mutually exclusive to the other, and everything that I've studied in my MBA, I know Toyota was one of the pioneers in innovation, from Kaizen to everything Six Sigma, all of that. So thank you for that. I wish we had more time to continue that conversation, because I have a couple of hyperlinks from there, but we shall hold back. And that's innovation mindset, right? That large organizations like Toyota have always fostered. We've then got Volvo, safe, stable. That's the image that you get from Volvo. And they continue to do their, safety is our DNA campaign, which is great. But they're also doing innovative things, because if you don't innovate and or disrupt, you will stay behind. Campex is an example of what a corporate can do without disrupting too much internally. You lead the innovation program called Campex for Volvo in India. Could you explain a little bit about what Campex does, and how does it fit within the startup ecosystem in India?
Sure. First of all, thank you to having me on this panel, and thank you for all the startup community and industry leadership over here in the room. So we are in the midst of a large transformation at Volvo Group. When I say that, we are looking at 100% safe, 100% fossil-free, and 100% more productive solutions in the market. While we are out there in this journey, it is very important for us to have partners like startups which are on the forefront of the technology. And looking at this need, we do understand that large organizations work at a different pace as compared to startups. The sense of time is different. We did identify Campex as one of our open innovation arenas of the Volvo Group. We started our journey back in 2019 in Gothenburg, where we started our first Campex. The second one was in Bangalore in India, where we also have our largest R&D site. And we would say that, in the last 3.5 years, it has been an incredible journey with multiple partners where we are working with. Just to tell you a bit more about what Campex is, while we say it is the open innovation arena, it is an arena for the entire Volvo Group. By Volvo Group, I mean the trucks, buses, marine engines, financial services, everything other than Volvo Cars, as you know now, which is part of the Volvo Group. In this space, we are working on very compelling problem statements coming from our product owners and business owners, and we operate in 3 frameworks. The first one, which is a very old one, is the venture client, where we do quick proof of value projects with startups and identify them to commercialize. Currently, we have about 150 such startup projects globally and about 40 which are in India. The second framework that we also have is the incubator. So incubator is also where we work with early stage startups, early stage global startups, which are based in our Gothenburg facility, where we have startups across the globe working together with mentors, with support from IP, legal, and every other framework that a startup would need to succeed. And the third one, of course, we have is the venture builder. It is meant for our internal employees. We help them have their own startups outside the Volvo Group organization. So this is in short about what we do at Campex.
Thank you. That looks like a very comprehensive piece. So if any startups out there looking at mobility and want to get into an incubator, accelerator, you've got friends, you know who to contact. Vishaka will definitely be able to help you understand the program more and get into it. But also an example of a commonly used corporate innovation technique, right? So what can we do to encourage our employees not to leave, and how can we fund their innovation? How do we also look at people who are completely outside the corporate ecosystem, bring them in, right? So thank you for sharing that, Vishaka. Third question to Aman. Aman, you're with public policy with Amazon. Amazon, we know, is one of the biggest innovation hubs. I mean, doesn't need any explanation. it's gone from being an online bookstore to pretty much powering everything, right? I mean, selling books online to, yeah, I'm now the world's biggest cloud computing organization. I will sell you movies. I will, name it, right? I'll sell you vegetables. I mean, Amazon's there today. So they're there whether you like it or not. How does Amazon not just look at innovation internally, but I think very curious to find out everything Amazon does affects the ecosystem. So what do you all have in terms of innovation that helps the ecosystem, not just within Amazon, but outside as well? How does your corporate innovation work both ends?
Firstly, thank you for having me here, and thank you for the question. Let me start off by just talking about what as Amazon we do, and then a little bit about the ecosystem. I think for us, we are a customer-obsessed company. It's customer backwards for startups in the room or folks who are looking at ideas. That's the starting place for everything at Amazon, which is what do customers want, where they are, and we want to be able to innovate for them, think about them, and famously, Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, has often been quoted saying that there would be an empty chair in a room where he's having a meeting, and that chair is supposed to represent the customer in that meeting, so that no one ever forgets that this is who we are, which is customer backwards. Part of, again, Jeff's thinking, but also very strong to Amazon, is the idea that for innovation to happen, you don't need a fancy lab. You don't need some, specific program. You don't need specific people who've been in charge, made in charge of innovation, but it's something that everyone needs to drive. A lot of what we do is essentially on saying that innovation shouldn't make things complex, but it should make things simple. And part of that, in a very simple way, and something that, again, folks here could think about emulating in their organizations, is what we call a two-pizza rule. So essentially, the idea is that a team, if two pizzas are not enough to feed that team, then that team is maybe too big. And where it stems from is the idea that small teams are agile, they course correct faster, they move faster, and there are lesser number of approvals that you need. Large organizations, typically everyone starts off agile, and then you eventually get buried in bureaucracy and 10 layers of approvals that you need before you can move. And so the idea of a two-pizza team is very, very central to how we think about things. I'm happy to get into many other areas where, as Amazon, how it's an integral part of our culture and how we think about things. Just on your second part of the question, on how do we support the ecosystem, one of the things, and particularly for startups in India, that excites us is how startups in India are really solving big societal issues, right? You've got startups that are working on how can we increase agricultural yield. You've got startups thinking of innovative ways of delivering things to the last mile. You've got startups in, really solving core Indian issues, right? Our focus is on how can we work with these startups, take their solutions to the rest of the world. So you've all, hopefully you all are shopping on Amazon.in. But one big sort of focus for us as a company in India is our export program. That is a cumulative. We started exports in 2015. We ended 2024 at about $13 billion of cumulative exports, and we've recently just upped our target to get to about $80 billion of exports. This is B2C exports by 2030. We have about 170,000 or 170,000 exporters actively exporting. Right, and many of these, when you see it in, when you talk to customers in the US, they're ordering things from India day in, day out. And these are in categories that you might not think that Indian players are doing really well. Textile, linen, hospital scrubs, beauty is again an area. Toys is one of the fastest growing categories for us right now, and again doing really, really well. We also have dedicated programs for specific cohorts. I'll just call out a couple and then happy to get into more details. Now, we are working specifically with women entrepreneurs in a program called Amazon Saheli. The idea is how do we work with entrepreneurs to really have the entrepreneurs focus on what they are good at, which is coming up with the right product and making it the best product in the market. And then we help them in thinking through how do you get online, how do you access the Indian market, how do you access global markets, Similarly, we've got a program called Amazon Karigar, which is specifically focused on handicrafts and craftsmen and artisans across the country. And with Amazon Karigar, we have about 1.6 million Karigars today associated with us. With Amazon Saheli, we have 1.7 million women entrepreneurs who are associated with us. Lastly, and very briefly, I'd also mention we have an active fund where we fund startups as well. It's called the Amazon Sambhav Venture Fund. And through that fund, we've invested in a few startups. Some of you might have come across them as well. We've invested in the Good Glam Group, Hopscotch, Axio, a whole bunch of different companies that we've invested in. Again, because they're doing incredibly innovative work, and we think that we can help them in different capacities. We've just also announced a partnership, and I'll be remiss if I didn't do a quick public policy plug. So we've also just worked very closely with the government and the Ministry of Commerce and Trade, the Department of Internal Investment and Internal Trade, DPIIT, to announce a 1,000 crore fund for India, which is specifically for investing in startups focused on manufacturing. And I'm very happy to inform that within a month of launching this, we launched this in December, and last month itself we made our first investment in a women-led startup from Chhattisgarh, from Raipur, called RAS Beauty, RAS Beauty. Some of you might have heard of it, primarily an online brand. And that just, again, really brings together our idea that, it's not about the big cities, it's not about complicated innovation, it's about innovation happening in every part of the country and how we can help them either get on Amazon or essentially just get on online e-commerce space and how they can access the Indian market and the global market.
Thank you, Aman. That did give us, I think, a very, very broad view of what all Amazon does. If there's anything that you can do to disrupt Bangalore's traffic, that would be really welcome. So if you, I don't know, all three of you could possibly have a challenge that you could, do. But jokes apart, I think it's great to see large corporates actually, focusing on innovation programs, because there is one thing which is change, proactive change, and then there's proactive innovation, which is what is disruption, right? There was a famous man who once said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it, right? At some time, we're all looking to do that. And of all of the places in India, and this is no shameless plug for Bangalore, but Bangalore does top the inventions list, right? In terms of startups, number of startups in the ecosystem, in terms of the support that the ecosystem is given, etc. And this is Invest Karnataka after all. Given the large number of startups and the fact that you run programs, I think the two of you are in charge of or have highlighted the fact that you all work continually with startups as well. Can you share some light for the startups here, and what can the startups do to start engaging with your ecosystem? What kind of startups do you look for, and what is the mutual benefit that the two of you will likely get? And any one of you can start the answer. This is aimed at all three.
Sure. Since I have the mic, I'll take the advantage. No, I'll give a very quick, brief answer and then pass it on to my colleagues here. I think, as I was saying, right, that a big focus for us is always customer backwards. So if you're a startup today that is really solving a customer need, then we'd be very interested in having a conversation across our many programs. So, like one of the programs, for instance, I'll call out is a program specifically called Propel Accelerator. That's a program that's looking at, again, B2C products that, has a specific focus on manufacturing and is solving a real customer need and has a differentiating proposition that one can look at. So we constantly look for startups to work with closely who are solving for sort of deep Indian local issues and close to customers. And just to give you an idea of the scale, right, that, we have 1.6 million sellers on Amazon.in today, right? That's 16 lakh sellers who are selling every single day, a total of over 31 million different products, right, every single day. And so, and as a platform, our thinking is that how can we provide, as when you come to Amazon.in, do you have the widest selection possible, right? And that selection, just think of yourself as a consumer when you're coming on. You want to be able to ask for, look for anything on Amazon and find it there. Right, and so we are constantly looking for ways in how we can increase that selection and how we can really help you think through, and again through whether it might be technological solutions. You'd mentioned AWS, so there is a lot of technical tools that you do get access to through our cloud computing services, a lot of seller services that you are able to get access to. So across multiple different programs, I think again I'll just reiterate the idea that it's customer backwards, and so if you have an idea, then we'd be very, very happy to look into and speak more about it.
Yeah, this is working. So yes, so our perspective to look at innovation and implementation is very need-driven. While we have opportunity mapping, a lot of our challenges are need-driven, which come from the best of the business areas that we are working with internally within Campex. What is important is that while we are looking at a particular solution, of course, there is customer centricity, but also we look at the perspective of the technical feasibility and the business viability of it. I think a lot of us will be in the room familiar about the DVF framework that we look at when we implement solutions in the larger market. What is also important, while Campex is one arena where we are looking at technology and business acceleration, we are looking at solutions which are at horizon 1 and 2. The whole idea is how we are able to get out quickly with other startups to the market and make success and make a win-win-win. When I say the third win, it is the win for the startup, win for the customer, and win for the Volvo Group.
Thank you. Once again, let me try to kind of point towards what you said at two levels, right? On one hand, when we look at what startups bring to the table, more often than not, it's a technology innovation, and that's great. But for startups to be, and the companies, the collaboration to be groundbreaking and to offer meaningful contributions back to customers, countries, regions, I think we need to balance out three things. First, of course, is the technology innovation. On top of that, the physical innovation, where the companies or the industries have a better handle. And thirdly, a policy innovation. Only when all the three confluence together, technology by the startup, the industry or the company offering some kind of physical breakthrough which can leverage on technology, and then a policy breakthrough influenced by the industry working with policymakers to make that possible. You can then scale and create mass impact. Coming to what startups need to know, I think on top of technology, it's very important for you to develop the ability to understand the business. More often than not, companies cannot come out in public domain and put forth their practical problem statements, right? But if you are a keen observer of the way the trends play out, you can easily catch that if we're talking electric, there could be an immediate problem on range anxiety. Is this something that I can fulfill? I'm just giving you a very layman example. So I think that orientation and understanding the business context of any industry where you're trying to intervene becomes very important. That's one skill that you need to pick up on top of the technology backbone that you have. For the corporates sitting from the other side of the fence, how do you communicate? What is the mechanism by which you reach out to the larger public and talk about your problem statement? And this is not easy. For a company which has perfect SOPs, things are, maybe you have a global standard which is not met, you might live in that myth that you don't have a problem. So how do you make insiders understand that what is the next level is one of the most difficult things to do? So I think these are the two sides of the spectrum where you need to look from outside as well as from internalize. How do you reach out and connect and put your problems to the larger audience? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that also is the culture that the organization has, right? And it's entirely top-down. If the top management is very innovation-driven and focused and is serious about it, and it's not just a tick that they have to do for the CSR, then I think it's definitely making a change. So thank you for that. Show of hands, how many startups in the audience? Okay, reasonable number, I'd say about 22.3%. Any corporates in the audience? 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's one man here who's not raising his hand, but I know that he's from a corporate. Okay, and how many students in the audience? Okay, all right. Thank you. Just so that they get an understanding of what sort of audience there is and I can tailor my questions. Thank you. How many is still awake in the audience? Surely we can see more hands than that. Okay, thank you very much. Back to, and the reason I asked is because it's very hard to predict the audience today, right? Whether it is for the company, whether it's for the startups. Because there's students today who come out wanting to be entrepreneurs. There are people who have been part of corporates coming out wanting to be entrepreneurs. There are people who are serial entrepreneurs who probably know how the system works. But for everybody else, wanting to sell, you want to sell into a large enterprise, and corporate innovation is a way to get into it. It could be acqui-hire, it could be they become a customer, it could just be a very great partnership, right? I mean, with Volvo, LiDAR, that's how it worked, right? With Toyota, you guys are into air mobility now. And that's fascinating because innovation is also about disruption. It's not just an incremental change, it's what can you do to break and start from scratch again. And I think Toyota Kirloskar is looking at that as well. How far along are you guys with air mobility, Mr. Maru?
Let me take that, and thank you for connecting. It touches a lot of chords because you mentioned about the Bangalore traffic. And just yesterday I was reading in the newspaper about a very interesting idea. But first, coming to what Toyota is doing, we talked about the woven city and we talked about how we throw open this entire ecospace. And mobility is not just about cars. It is about staying with the customer and participating in every need. And of course, what else but air mobility? So there is this very interesting company called Joby Mobility, right? And we have an investment arm, it's called Toyota Ventures. And they in turn trying to drive the future of mobility, participated with Joby Mobility. And when we participate, it's not just about cutting a check. It's about understanding their processes, working with them, imbibing the Toyota production system, which is a gold standard when it comes to manufacturing, even after 80 years since it's been kind of practiced. We take a deep stake into the operation. So the whole idea of air mobility was that on top of what we do on road, I think this is the solution towards the future problems of congested cities, but you need it at scale, you need it with a technological breakthrough, and you need it to make it affordable to the customer. So Joby Mobility is a great example. Coming back to Bangalore, and I don't know how true this is, it's destined for 2028, but if what they claim is true, for as little as 2,000 rupees, you can fly to Bangalore airport from anywhere.
So we've been told.
And at the center of that is a drone which can do a vertical takeoff, then convert into a plane mid-air. I still worry about the safety, but I'm sure we'll figure that out. But this is the kind of disruption and innovation that comes on every area.
That's fantastic. As a segue from that, if I may ask, Aman, this is slightly not corporate innovation into the startup ecosystem, but any innovation within Amazon that's happening that is exciting that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I think, as I was saying, that as a part of our corporate culture or company culture, we have, what we call essentially something called day one mindset, right? And it's something that you will hear every Amazonian talk about very often. And the idea of that is that, we see ourselves as, and it's great that we got referred to as the new kid on the block. Not very often we get referred to that anymore, but we, for us, everything that we do every single day, it's day one, right? It's a mindset. It's about moving fast. It's about being agile. It's about learning very quickly, being able to adapt and move on and be able to serve customers. So that's very core and central to how we think about things. And part of that, right, we have a big part of our company is defined by leadership principles, and we have 14 of them that really define on how we work and so on. So I'll speak to one of them and then get into that part on interesting innovation, right? So we have a leadership principle that's called disagree but commit. Right? The idea is it doesn't matter when you're sitting on a table what your title is, what your seniority is, what your level is. Good ideas, everyone has good ideas, and everyone shares them. And once we agree that this is where we are going, whether you disagree with that approach, everyone commits to it 100% and tries to deliver on that. This ensures that there is no place where someone couldn't say a good idea because, X titled people were sitting on the table and the person didn't feel comfortable to share. Look, we are innovating every single day. I'd give an example of one on and hopefully you've interacted with it. We recently launched Rufus, which is our AI shopping assistant, and it's done phenomenally well in India. It told me about something that I had no idea of, I must admit, but it did tell me something. When we were trying the beta version, and it informed me that you can make really good naans in air fryers, because that's the question I'd asked, that I'd like to make a naan at home and how do I do it, and it proposed air fryers, and apparently they're really good. So that's one example of how we are thinking of innovation. You've thought of, if you look at Prime Video, it's a great example of how we think of ourselves as a streaming platform where you've got, we were one of the first OTT players in the country to really go vernacular and go into various languages, unlike many of the others. But also we are saying, look, we don't have the entire content library. Let's bring in different players. And it is really a gateway for you to be able to sit back and say, I want to watch the latest movie, and you will have access to it there, whether it is coming from Amazon content or MGM Studios. That's not stopping it for it to be available on Amazon. Similarly, on Amazon Pay, you've seen many innovations. One particular innovation that I'd love to talk about, and we are very hopeful of bringing it to India soon as well, is what we call Project Kuiper. The idea of Project Kuiper, and again, just for the audience, we in this room represent a group of people who cannot imagine a life that is not online. Right, but we are also in a country where, if you look at our population today, you've got about 600 million people who are not connected to the internet, and potentially about 800 million people who don't use the internet every single day. Right, and so there is a very large number of people who are underserved or unserved by the internet. And so Project Kuiper is really about putting out satellites in low orbit and essentially creating a mesh around the entire Earth and be able to provide high-speed, incredibly affordable internet every single place. So this does away with the need of having fiber. It is something that we are working very closely with, obviously, the US government, but the Indian government has been very encouraging of us bringing this to India as well, and hopefully soon enough you'll see it here. So that's a great example of essentially saying that, look, commercially there might be something there that will come in when it does. It's a high capex, high risk, innovative project that we've taken on, but we are very excited to bring it here because that's about connecting or bringing potentially 600 to 800 million people online in a country like India, in a market like India, which is very, very exciting.
We are talking about India, right? Yeah. Which has the highest penetration of mobile and mobile data. But it's really interesting to know, because that's a fact. I wasn't aware that there's absolutely any part of India that's not online. Well, you learn new things every day, so thank you for sharing that. One final question for the panelists, and then we'll open it out to the audience. Any questions that you might have about innovation in a large corporate, how you can, associate with it. So the question that I have is very simple. If there's one innovation that exists right now worldwide that you would instantly bring into your organization, what would it be? Doesn't have to be a long answer, it could just be a couple of lines, or as long as you want.
Well, it's a very tricky question, so let me attempt answering it. One innovation, and it's like selecting your favorites amongst your children, like I was talking to you earlier. So anything and everything which can help us at Volvo Group to make mobility sustainable and to make this planet a better place is something that we would be very eager to integrate in our systems.
It's a very dangerous question to answer. I'll stay clear of it.
Spoken in this room stays in the room.
So, without actually referring to the automobile industry or a company, but some innovation which I personally find very gratifying as a student for life. I think the entire digital public infrastructure that we have managed to build, the idea was there for everybody to see, right? Payment, wallets were dime to dozen. But to take it and adapt it to this scale, and then and it's not just about convenience in payment, it touches lives, it changes lives. When you talk about the jam trifecta coming together, is one quick thing. The second thing which I was very impressed is the quick commerce. As a student, the just-in-time concept of Toyota, it's very, very difficult to practice, and we believe we've kind of perfected it in the way we implement. But here we see this innovation coming where in a country as diverse as India, within a span of under 10 minutes, you are able to offer anything under the sun. So I think this kind of, whether they make money or not is a different concept, but that very idea to break through, to change the connotation of time and convenience on demand, I think have been personally gratifying. Many technologies I think are coming, many exciting things happening on how do you break the cost barrier on green hydrogen. And if that breakthrough comes through, I think it will be a paradigm change in the world. Many startups are working, many interesting work being done in US and Israel. But these are some of the pieces where I'm very passionate and excited.
I'll just quickly add, I think, yeah, I'd agree. It's a simple, short question, very difficult to answer. But two things I'll just call out, and again, just as a way to think about, DPIs, I couldn't agree more with Swapnesh, that, makes a lot of sense and you should think about it. I had a good fortune of being on the sidelines of when UPI was really coming out. This is we can't even imagine that time, but pre-demonetization and then after that. And a very senior person at that time had said, very senior government person at that time had said on the sidelines, saying that, it's impossible, right? How is it possible that folks in a village will be okay with money being transferred from A to B where they never get to touch it? Like the very idea and thought just doesn't make sense, right? We are getting close to 1 billion transactions a day today. So one of the things that I'll always say is that trust the Indian consumer. I think one of the big learnings and a humbling experience at that time was that I think, a lot of folks essentially didn't believe that the Indian consumer has the ability to leapfrog innovations and really partake. I think UPI is a great success for the government, but it is a great and an incredible indictment of how good the Indian consumer is and how open to innovation they are. So that I would constantly sort of encourage that, think about that. And the second thing I would say is that in our experience and my experience in the industry here, it is very difficult to really scale at a population level without working for the ecosystem and working very closely with the government and whether that's state government, local government, or the central government. It is very, very important to be able to work with the government in a big way, but also look at ways in which if the ecosystem thrives, then everyone does well. So that's something that as an approach, I would definitely recommend as you go out and think of the next disruption or innovation.
Thank you. Yes, I think UPI is definitely a great example of innovation. I mean, it was an absurd idea, right, when it first came out. I can just transfer money instantly from my phone to your phone, effectively, right? We were like, oh my God, can you imagine the Indian government trying to implement it? But it has happened. There's frameworks that were set up, changed. All the banking companies complied. New startups came in to actually enable it. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. With the same old framework, this would not have happened, which is, I think, a great example of how innovation needs to work across all levels and all sectors. So that's fine. And it reminded me of, I'm a great quotes person, of one of my favorite inventors and innovators, Albert Einstein. He said, if at first the idea is not absurd, then it's not innovation. right? So that's where we are. Thank you for your thoughts. Opening it up, I don't know how much time we have, but we can take one or two questions. So yes, hands up. The first hand I saw was the second person there. Yes, please. I think we've got a mic in the audience.
Hello. Approach a corporate where, example, your core business is not related to autism or food, but how to help you envision 10 years from now why autism will be a big chunk of our global population. How to tell the corporate and bring them in our journey.
I'm happy to take a stab and then pass it on. I think, look, two things I'd say. One is, and this is not, I'm speaking Amazon agnostic here, so I'm not saying just for Amazon necessarily, but one of the things that we, and it's a very close topic to me, and I've spoken about it at various forums. We in fact got recognized last year by the President of India as among the top sort of corporate organizations in India working with people with disabilities of any kind, right? And a big part of that was essentially that they are integrated in every facet of our operations today. Right, so whether it's at a fulfillment center, whether it's a delivery station, for hearing impaired, we actually run a full-fledged delivery station, right? And a big part of it, right, we've gone from, various underrepresented groups. We are one of the largest hirers of, for instance, Army veterans, women, so on and so forth. A big part of that, right, is essentially the framing. And the framing we do it is that, yes, it's the right thing to do, but it's also fantastic for business. Right? It is, we have responsibilities towards our shareholders and so on. So it is not something that we're just doing because it's some program on the side. It is something that makes a lot of business sense, right? So that's one part of it that I definitely say that when you're communicating the idea of it, yes, it is a particular topic in a particular area, but it's also an incredibly wide spectrum, especially in the topic that you brought up. And so I think that should really, if you're able to underscore that and bring that out, then that'll be great. And then the second part of it is, I think again, what is that innovative thing that you're doing, right? So a cohort that you're approaching, a lot of times what happens is folks are very clear on the cohort they're addressing, but what they're addressing it with might be the same idea that many people are doing, right? So what's the innovative part that you're doing outside of that specific cohort, right? And if you're able to bring that, sort of two things together, I think it's a compelling proposition.
Yeah, I mean, one more thing I'd say is sometimes the most obvious ways also work. Yes, it's a fantastic initiative. There's a lot of neurodivergence, initiatives that are going on. Whilst they may not directly be able to take in whatever solution you've done, because it's an e-marketplace, right? So you can go to Amazon. There are venture funds. They run venture catalysts. They run venture funds. So how can you use that part of their innovation ecosystem to help yourselves, right? There's also CSR funds that the organizations are likely to have, which is the most obvious route people take. But you've got to try everything, I think, and that's what the life of an entrepreneur is.
Thank you so much. My question is human-centric. On one hand, we have a very fast-paced...
Can you introduce yourself, please, and say what
I'm Manjesh. I basically come from an engineering background. But now I'm here as part of a food venture startup. Okay. My co-founder, Soumya.
Sure.
My question is a bit longer, I'm sorry. But it's more, I think, very appropriate and human-centric. We are all here a lot of encouragement about disruptive technologies. On one hand, we have, which brings an human empowerment with technology, which is we are all proud of because it reaches every common man. On the other hand, we have a challenge. The challenge is technology and human balance. Where does this take us? How do we balance? And what is the corporate role in it? On one hand, we have technology, which we want to give it, like giving a tab to a child. On the other hand, a country like Sweden, which gave tabs to every kid and every adult last decade, is taking out tabs out of children's hand now. The technology is already causing so much of human issues, which are psychological, physiological, and it's much more complicated than what actually it is supposed to empower. I hope technologies like not inventing DDT. As we all know, when DDT was invented, the person was given the Nobel Prize and it was all appreciated worldwide. And it was banned 30 years thereafter. We don't use it anymore. So how is this corporate is interwoven into the innovation, human responsibility, and psychological aspects of innovation? And how the corporate is addressing it so that you don't overdo in the process of evolving and empowering society, we don't end up destroying it.
Yeah, that's a very philosophical question, sir, and I think it will take longer than a couple of minutes that we have. But definitely, I think the points that you brought up are very well addressed. And if you all can answer it quickly, or we can move on to the next question.
So it's a deeply classical, philosophical point. I think nobody has any perfect answer for this. I'll tell you what we do as a corporation. We deeply believe that technology enables, but not at the cost of you forgetting your core purpose. So Soumya was a part, and when we automate accounting, we try to ensure that the basic concept of bookkeeping is not lost in that journey of digitization. Autonomous driving should not make you forget what driving is all about as you do. How you slice that line depends on your individual ethos, but it's very clear that the core DNA should never be compromised, even if it means a part of comfort or getting a technological edge, could be a competitive edge too. So it's a line that you have to define, draw, and it should be non-negotiable.
The lady in the red jacket, yeah, you've raised your hand earlier. If we can move the mic to her, please. It's coming around to you. Just checking how much more time. Yeah, that's the last question, I'm afraid. But our lovely panelists will be around, so feel free to meet them in the room, outside the room, and ask them your questions. Go ahead.
Check. My name is Dr. Anita Prasad, first trans woman of Indian origin in Germany. I came last year to India, 23 years I lived in Germany. After coming here, I have a foundation, Anita Humanitarian Foundation, and as well robotics company that is Vistarik Robotics. So 2 ventures. India has a robot, already we have done that. My question to you guys, you're all transnational, you're coming from a different area. So my question is, where is this innovation happening? The biggest innovation that you adapt personally? And if so, what are the reasons? A little bit, maybe just, a small information. And third thing is, what do you have to leave for India that, more innovation comes out of this? Thank you.
Can we get one question of the 3 to answer?
Which part of the world where the innovations are happening and why they are accepting it from their perspective?
Specific to your ecosystem. Do you want to take it?
Yes, I can take that. So while we are currently as India Hub working on global challenges, we are looking at this as a gateway opportunity also for Asia Pacific. So if you ask me to point one region, it is very difficult to say which is easier for adoption, but we see the globe breaking down into clusters of innovation, and we see that Asia Pacific is one of the one which is emerging with time.
I hope that answers your question. I know you had 2 more, but maybe you can catch her once she's off the stage. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you all staying awake and off your phones for most of it. So appreciative of that. Have a good day. Thank you to our lovely panelists. And wanted to leave with something that I found this morning when I was Googling about corporate innovation and famous people. And Steve Jobs has this really nice quote which says, "Innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity, not a threat." And I think that's pretty much the philosophy for most corporates, out there, and specifically these 3 on stage today. Thank you very much.
Brilliant finish to an amazing presentation to each of our speakers. We'd like to thank Swapnish, Vishaka, and Aman. panel there, talking to us on corporate partnerships and innovation strategies. I'd like to request T.R. Anand, Board Member, TiE Bangalore, to present a small token of appreciation to Smita Malipatil.